I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. The tension builds quietly at first, like a whisper carried through the halls of Forrester Creations, where something unseen begins to stir beneath the surface of an otherwise ordinary day. Melissa Dillon, still shaken by the strange and persistent phone calls that have haunted her, tries to steady herself as she moves through her work, clinging to routine as a shield against the unknown. The voice on the other end of those calls had been unsettling, insistent, claiming there was unfinished business that refused to be ignored. And no matter how firmly Dillon tried to shut it down, it lingered like a shadow she couldn't outrun. On this particular Friday, that shadow finally begins to take shape, creeping out from the edges of mystery into something far more immediate and terrifying. A faint noise breaks the silence around her, subtle but unmistakable, and Dillon freezes, her instincts sharpening as she scans the room, sensing that she is no longer alone. The air feels heavier, charged with anticipation, as her eyes dart toward a rack of elegant dresses, where the slightest movement betrays the presence of someone hiding just out of sight. What happens next unfolds in a heartbeat, yet feels stretched into an eternity as the figure steps forward, revealing themselves in a moment designed to shock. Dillon's breath catches, her fear erupting into a piercing scream that echoes through the room, raw and uncontrollable, as the weight of the encounter crashes down on her. The scene is crafted to make it seem as though something truly sinister has emerged, someone dangerous and calculating, perhaps even a figure with dark intentions tied to past betrayals or hidden agendas. For a brief, chilling moment, it feels as though this could be the work of a true villain, someone capable of turning Dillon's life into a nightmare. And yet, beneath the surface of that fear, there's a subtle suggestion that things may not be exactly what they appear to be. The intensity of the moment, while undeniably real, carries a hint of misdirection, as if the truth behind the mask could be something far more complicated, even deeply personal. As speculation begins to swirl, another possibility takes root, one that shifts the tone from pure menace to something more twisted and emotionally layered. What if this isn't the act of an enemy at all, but rather a cruel and elaborate prank orchestrated by someone who knows Dillon all too well? The idea becomes even more compelling with the growing presence of Remy Price, whose connection to the story promises to unravel secrets that have long been buried. There's a history there, one that could be filled with mischief, rivalry, and unresolved tension, the kind that might manifest in games that blur the line between humor and harm. If Remy is indeed tied to Dillon as a half-brother or stepbrother, then this encounter takes on an entirely different meaning, transforming fear into a complicated mix of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. It's easy to imagine him lurking behind that dress rack, perhaps even wearing a mask to heighten the drama, drawing out the moment for his own amusement before revealing himself in a way that leaves Dillon reeling. The possibility becomes even more unsettling when considering Remy's past, his actions toward others proving that he's capable of crossing boundaries in ways that aren't easily dismissed. While his previous behavior carried genuine menace, this situation with Dillon might exist in a gray area, where intention and impact collide in unpredictable ways. What he sees as teasing or harmless mind games could feel like something far more threatening to her, especially given the buildup of those eerie phone calls. Regardless of the truth, one thing is certain: the encounter will leave Dillon shaken to her core, forcing her to confront not only the identity of the person targeting her, but also the deeper emotions tied to their connection. The reveal promises to be explosive, a turning point that will ripple through her story and leave lasting consequences in its wake. Meanwhile, as one storyline teeters on the edge of revelation, another unfolds with a quieter, more introspective intensity. Will Spencer finds himself at a crossroads, grappling with the emotional fallout of manipulation and strained relationships that refuse to mend easily. When Katie Logan Spencer arrives to see him, her presence brings a sense of grounding, a moment of calm amid the storm that has been building in his life. Their conversation becomes a space for honesty, where Will can finally open up about the pressure he's been under, the ways Ivy Forrester's actions have complicated his world, and the lingering tension that continues to affect his connection with Elektra. It's not an easy conversation, but it's a necessary one, filled with vulnerability and the quiet hope that understanding might lead to clarity. Katie listens with the wisdom of someone who has seen her fair share of heartbreak and conflict, her perspective offering a guiding light through the confusion that clouds Will's thoughts. She doesn't simply offer comfort, she provides insight, helping him see beyond the immediate pain to the bigger picture that lies ahead. Her words carry weight, not because they promise easy solutions, but because they remind him that he's not alone in navigating these challenges. As their conversation draws to a close, there's a subtle shift in Will, a sense that he's beginning to find his footing again, even if the path forward remains uncertain. And as these two storylines continue to unfold side by side, one steeped in suspense and shocking revelations, the other grounded in emotional truth and guidance, the stage is set for a day filled with drama, intensity, and moments that will linger long after the screen fades to black. As the echo of Dylan's scream still lingers in the air, the moment refuses to settle, instead stretching into a charged silence that feels almost suffocating. Her heart pounds wildly against her chest as she stares at the figure before her, her mind racing to make sense of what she's seeing, what she's feeling, and whether the danger she feared is real or something far more complicated. The dim lighting of the room casts long shadows that seem to dance along the walls, amplifying the uncertainty and turning every second into a test of her composure. Whoever stands in front of her holds the power of revelation, the answer to the torment that has followed her through those unsettling phone calls, and yet the truth doesn't come easily. There's a hesitation, a pause that feels almost deliberate, as if the person is savoring the tension they've created, letting Dylan sit in the full weight of her fear before the final piece of the puzzle is revealed. And in that pause, 1,000 possibilities flood her mind, each more unsettling than the last, blurring the line between nightmare and reality. When the truth finally begins to surface, it doesn't arrive as a simple answer, but as a wave of conflicting emotions that crash into Dylan all at once. The fear that once gripped her starts to twist into something else. Anger, disbelief, even a sense of betrayal that cuts deeper than she expected. If this is indeed someone from her past, someone tied to her family in a way that should have brought familiarity instead of fear, then the weight of the moment becomes even heavier. The idea that this entire ordeal could have been orchestrated as some kind of twisted joke, a game meant to provoke and unsettle her, feels almost impossible to accept. And yet, the pieces begin to align in a way that can't be ignored, pointing toward a connection that is both undeniable and deeply complicated. The laughter that might follow such a reveal, if it comes at all, would feel hollow and misplaced against the emotional storm it has unleashed. In the aftermath of that revelation, the atmosphere shifts, but the tension doesn't disappear. It simply transforms. Dylan is left to grapple with the reality of what's just happened, her emotions refusing to settle into anything neat or predictable. If Remy Price is truly behind it all, then his presence in her life is no longer just a question of mystery, but a challenge she must face head-on. His past actions, particularly those that crossed into genuinely unsettling territory, make it difficult to dismiss this as harmless, no matter how he might frame it. What he may see as playful provocation carries consequences that ripple far beyond the moment, forcing Dylan to confront not only him, but the unresolved history that binds them together. And as their connection comes into sharper focus, it becomes clear that this is only the beginning of a much deeper and more emotionally charged story. Elsewhere, the tone softens, but the emotional weight remains just as significant as Will Spencer continues his heartfelt conversation with Katie Logan Spencer. There's a quiet vulnerability in the way he opens up, his words carrying the strain of everything he's been holding back for far too long. Ivy Forrester's manipulation has left its mark, creating cracks in his relationships that feel difficult to repair, especially when it comes to the lingering tension with Elektra. Katie listens with patience and understanding, allowing Will the space to express his confusion, his frustration, and the uncertainty that has been weighing on him. It's a moment of genuine connection, one that contrasts sharply with the chaos unfolding elsewhere, yet feels equally important in shaping what comes next. Katie's response is measured and thoughtful, offering not just comfort but perspective that challenges Will to see things more clearly. She reminds him that while manipulation can distort reality, it doesn't have to define his choices moving forward, and that the strength to rebuild what's been damaged lies within him. Her guidance doesn't erase the pain, but it provides a sense of direction, a way to move forward without losing himself in the process. As their conversation draws to a close, there's a quiet shift in the atmosphere, a feeling that something meaningful has been gained even in the midst of uncertainty. Will may not have all the answers, but he carries with him a renewed sense of clarity, one that will guide him through the challenges still ahead. And as both stories continue to unfold, one rooted in shock and revelation, the other in reflection and growth, the emotional stakes rise, promising even more drama, tension, and deeply human moments in the chapters yet to come. The aftermath refuses to fade quietly, instead settling over Dylan like a storm that hasn't quite decided whether to pass or rage on. The confrontation leaves her standing in the middle of Forrester Creations, surrounded by the same elegant designs and polished surfaces that once felt familiar, but now seem strangely distant, as if the world she knew has shifted just enough to feel unsteady. Every breath she takes feels heavier, weighed down by the realization that the fear she experienced wasn't just about a stranger in the shadows, but about someone who may have always existed just outside her line of sight, waiting for the right moment to step forward. If this truly traces back to Remy, then the implications stretch far beyond a single frightening encounter, reaching into the past they share and the unresolved emotions that have quietly lingered between them. The idea that he could orchestrate something so intense, blurring the line between a prank and psychological torment, forces Dylan to reevaluate everything she thought she understood about him. And in that realization, a deeper conflict begins to take shape. One that isn't just about fear, but about trust, identity, and the fragile boundaries between family and betrayal. As the weight of the moment settles in, Dylan's reaction begins to evolve, shifting from shock into something sharper, more defined. There's a flicker of anger now, steady and rising, fueled by the sense that she's been manipulated, toyed with, and pushed into a corner without warning. Her voice, once overtaken by panic, begins to find its strength again, even if it trembles slightly under the pressure of everything she's feeling. She demands answers, not just about the calls or the staged encounter, but about the motives behind it all, about why someone would go to such lengths to unsettle her. And whether the response she receives is defensive, dismissive, or disturbingly casual, it only deepens the emotional divide between them. Because no matter how it's explained, the damage has already been done, and the memory of that fear won't simply disappear with a few words. The energy in the room becomes charged with unspoken tension, a fragile standoff where every glance and every movement carries meaning. If Remy attempts to brush it off, to downplay the situation as something harmless or even amusing, it only underscores how differently they perceive what just happened. For him, it might have been a game, a twisted way of reconnecting or asserting his presence. But for Dylan, it was a moment of genuine terror, one that shook her to her core. That disconnect creates a fracture that can't be easily repaired, leaving both of them standing on opposite sides of an emotional divide that feels impossible to bridge. And yet, beneath the anger and confusion, there's also a lingering question. What does he really want from her? And why now? It's a question that hangs in the air, unanswered but impossible to ignore, hinting at deeper motivations that have yet to fully reveal themselves. Meanwhile, across town, the quieter, more introspective conversation between Will Spencer and Katie Logan Spencer begins to leave a lasting impression of its own. The warmth of their connection creates a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding in Dylan's world, offering a reminder that even in the midst of conflict, there are still moments of clarity and understanding to be found. Will takes in Katie's words carefully, her guidance settling into his thoughts as he begins to process everything he's been dealing with. The manipulation from Ivy Forrester no longer feels like an insurmountable force, but rather something he can confront with a clearer perspective, something he doesn't have to let define his decisions moving forward. And as he reflects on his strained relationship with Elektra, there's a sense that he's beginning to see a path forward, even if it's not an easy one. Katie, for her part, watches that shift happen in real time, recognizing the subtle change in Will's demeanor as he starts to regain a sense of control over his own story. Her role in this moment isn't to fix everything for him, but to remind him of his own strength, to help him rediscover the confidence that may have been shaken by recent events. There's a quiet pride in her expression, a reassurance that he's capable of navigating the challenges ahead, even when the path feels uncertain. And as their time together comes to an end, the atmosphere carries a sense of cautious hope, a feeling that while the road ahead may still hold complications, it's no longer as overwhelming as it once seemed. Back at Forrester Creations, however, that sense of hope feels much harder to grasp, as Dylan stands at the center of a situation that is far from resolved. The encounter has opened a door that can't be closed, bringing buried connections and unresolved tensions into the light in a way that demands attention. Whatever happens next will be shaped by the choices both she and Remy make in the wake of this moment. Choices that could either deepen the divide between them or force them to confront the truth of their shared past. And as the camera of this unfolding story pulls back just slightly, capturing both the intensity of Dylan's confrontation and the quiet resilience growing within Will, it becomes clear that this is only the beginning. The drama is far from over, and the emotional stakes are only rising, promising a continuation that will dig even deeper into the complexities of fear, trust, and the fragile connections that bind these lives together. The tension refuses to loosen its grip as the moment lingers, stretching into something far more profound than a single confrontation, as if the very walls of Forrester Creations are holding on to the echoes of what just transpired. Dylan stands there, caught between what she has just experienced and what it now means for her future, her thoughts racing faster than she can contain them. The shock may be fading, but in its place comes a sharper awareness, one that forces her to confront the reality of the situation with unflinching clarity. If Remy is truly at the center of this, then his reappearance isn't just unexpected, it's deliberate, calculated, and filled with intentions she has yet to fully understand. The weight of their possible connection presses down on her, raising questions about the past that may have been buried for a reason, questions that now demand answers whether she's ready or not. And as the silence between them thickens, it becomes clear that whatever comes next will not be simple, nor will it be easy to walk away from. There's a shift in Dylan's posture, subtle but powerful, as she begins to reclaim her sense of control, refusing to let fear dictate her next move. Her voice, though still edged with emotion, carries a firmness that wasn't there before, signaling that she's no longer willing to be the passive target in someone else's game. She presses for the truth, not just about the staged encounter, but about everything that led up to it: the calls, the secrecy, the calculated timing. Each question feels like a step forward, a refusal to remain in the dark any longer, even if the answers threaten to complicate her life in ways she can't yet predict. And in that moment, the dynamic between them begins to change, shifting from one of fear and uncertainty to something more confrontational, more balanced, as if Dylan is finally stepping into her own power. But power doesn't erase pain, and the emotional undercurrent of betrayal still lingers, refusing to be ignored. If Remy responds with anything less than sincerity, it only deepens the fracture between them, turning what could have been a tense but honest exchange into something far more volatile. The possibility that he might dismiss her feelings, or worse, justify his actions as harmless, adds fuel to a fire that is already dangerously close to burning out of control. Because for Dylan, this was never just a joke. It was a violation of her sense of safety. A moment that blurred the line between reality and fear in a way that cannot simply be undone. And yet, beneath all the anger, there's still that lingering thread of curiosity, a need to understand why he would go to such lengths, what he hoped to achieve, and whether there's something deeper driving his behavior. It's that question that keeps her rooted in the moment, unwilling to turn away until she gets the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. Across town, the emotional rhythm takes on a gentler cadence, as Will Spencer begins to carry Katie Logan Spencer's words with him, letting them settle into his thoughts like a quiet reassurance. There's a sense of reflection in the way he processes everything they discussed, as if he's slowly untangling the emotional knots that have been tightening around him. Ivy Forrester's manipulation no longer feels like an insurmountable force, but rather something he can face with a clearer perspective, something he can push back against instead of allowing it to define his relationships. The tension with Elektra still lingers, unresolved and delicate, but there's a growing sense that it doesn't have to remain that way forever. And as Will considers his next steps, there's a subtle shift in his demeanor, a quiet determination beginning to take shape beneath the surface. Katie, watching him from a distance as their conversation draws to a close, seems to sense that change, her expression softening with a mixture of relief and hope. She knows better than anyone that growth doesn't happen overnight, that clarity often comes in small, hard-earned moments rather than sweeping transformations. But this feels like a beginning, a turning point that could lead Will towards something stronger, something more grounded than where he's been. Her presence, steady and reassuring, leaves an imprint that lingers even after she's gone, a reminder that guidance and support can make all the difference when navigating uncertain paths. And as Will stands there, quietly absorbing everything, it becomes clear that he's no longer as lost as he once felt. Back at Forrester Creations, however, the storm is far from over, and the emotional intensity shows no signs of fading anytime soon. Dylan and Remy remain locked in a moment that feels suspended in time, each waiting for the other to reveal just a little more, to push the conversation toward a truth that refuses to stay hidden. The air between them is thick with unresolved tension, charged with the kind of energy that can either lead to confrontation or revelation, depending on what happens next. And as the scene slowly begins to pull back, capturing the weight of everything left unsaid, it becomes clear that this story is only just beginning to unfold. The questions raised here will not be answered easily, and the consequences of this encounter will ripple outward, touching every corner of their lives in ways they can't yet foresee. In this world of tangled relationships and hidden motives, one thing remains certain. The deeper they dig, the more complicated everything becomes. And the truth, when it finally comes to light, may change everything.